talking with the 1940s. Lost century. I knew it was time to come home. I just got back from visiting family in Maine, and I knew it was time to go because I started fighting with children. My little nephew tried telling me that Kyle Giersdorf, known as Booga, a professional Fortnite player, won $30 million at a competition. I knew in my soul this was an exaggeration, and though I should have just said, "Wow," like you're supposed to, I told my nephew's fiction to my phone. The phone sneered, then gave the right info. Actually, I said, "A bad start. Booga only won $3 million at that competition." My nephew glared at my phone, paused a moment to adjust to his defeat, then surprised me by not asking for my forgiveness. Instead, he said, "I meant he's won $30 million total. From all his competitions." More bullshit. My phone and I exchanged a look of pity. Then I mined, once again, for the truth. "Sorry, buddy, but he's won a total of $3,777,425. I showed my nephew the number. He fell into bitter silence, and I felt what it feels like to win and still be a loser. That's always a fine time to hit the road. Whenever my little family and I are in Maine, we go to Montville, the hometown of Grandpa Fred and Grammy Nancy, my father's parents. Montville is French for mountain town. It's a very hilly place, very docile, bumpy. In 1840, there were 2,153 people. Since then, the number dropped, crashing to the lowest low in 1960, population 366, Pequenods or Hicks, then climbing back up to a little over 1,000 today. In Montville, disappearing people equals disappearing farmland. The people got gobbled up by wars, nooses, fire, water, donkey kicks, whiskey, and wintertime, and the fields got giddy with growth, their rewild campaign. Nowadays, a high tide of trees covers most of the town and will not recede. Grammy and Grandpa's house, however, stands at the top of a huge hayfield. From the house, you can see an infinity of wilderness. The trees rise and fall with the big land bumps, hills, which go from dark green to light green to blue to purple majesty, before fading into the color of the sky. The slow blend of earth and sky makes you believe that way out there, the two are one. Which reminds me, dear death, please be an easy blend of life and death, so when I'm gone, it takes so long for me to know I'm dead. In the long field, we saw a deer eggshell step out of the woods, point her nose toward outer space, then head back in again. We saw the hay tractor snoozing in the sun, its metal ticking now and then, the slow clock of the boondocks. We saw my dog, Blossom, open up her run engine all the way and fly across the field. When she runs, she bares her teeth in a mad smile. She's a couch dog, practically boneless, but in that vast, open territory, she shed generations of domestic softness. She tore across the field, racing back and back into her violent, glorious past, smiling like Lucifer in heaven when he first conceived of freedom. Then it was supper time. The kids sat at a kids' table in the next room. I sat at the big table with Grandpa, Grammy, Mindy, Mother, and Father. In other words, a table of storytellers. And I was angry, because at this table of story titans no one was talking. All of us just sat there feeding in the silence of chewing, gulping, breathing, eyes down, and chairs creaking. No background music saved us. I can't believe how many people eat without music. Animals. Yes, the silence was my fault too, but it's not my job to talk when I'm at a table of big talkers. It's my job to listen, absorb, fill the story hopper with magic, then go home and draw and write and be wonderful. There I sat, ingesting, filling only the gut hopper, and right when I began to suspect someone was about to say it, someone said it, the thing I hate so much. Wow, it's really quiet. We must be hungry, haha. I hate this. It's a thing said only by families full of water-thin blood, the kind of blood that couldn't wear down the smallest biscuit-brittle stone, not even after 1,000,000 years. But my family's blood is practically mud. It's so full of life, so full of stories. What's wrong with us? I mourned. I feared. Am I a member of a family without chemistry? It's like half of us are Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and the other half are his leading ladies. We should be all wrapped up in a sexy tangle of talk, stories pinging other stories, on and on into the night. At the end of my rope and hope, I tried activating Dad. Dad, tell about the time you almost killed a guy with a claw hammer. Dad said, what? Now you know part of the problem. Dad has hearing trouble. Truth be told, Grandpa and Grammy have the same trouble. Correct, that's possibly why we were all so quiet. It's completely why. Correct? Where is my compassion? Hearing loss is hardest for the one going through it, not for the son of the one. But, to be fair to me, my family is extremely slow when it comes to getting hearing aids that work. We're very good at getting the kind that suck, and we're wildly good at losing our hearing aids, especially Grandpa, losing them while tromping through the woods, while mowing the lawn, while sitting in recliners, asleep. Hearing aids fly from Grandpa's ears as fast as angry hornets from their holes. I spoke up. The time you almost killed a guy with a claw hammer. Everyone looked at Dad because everyone heard my request. Mom and Mindy especially heard it because their hearing is fine and I was yelling. Mindy responded by putting a hand on my knee, which is her way of tapping the brakes on her man-child. Dad told the story. I was working for Roy Daigle. As soon as Grandpa heard the name, he smiled. It was a lovely smile of knowing. That name had brought up what it was supposed to. Roy Daigle was a human turd, and everyone knew it. He was a jerk's jerk. You'd pass him a wrench, saw, or 2x4, and he'd rip it out of your hand, trying to hurt you in the process. Just because. You might have noticed Dad didn't have to yell to be heard. I can't explain. It's too painful. For some of you, I don't have to explain. You also have found yourself lost in the blind spot of your family's ears. Boo-hoo for the middle children. So, maybe it wasn't completely a hearing problem causing our silence. Maybe it was a comfort problem? We're all too comfortable around each other. Comfortable enough to feast on some companionable silence. All but me. To hell with comfort and companionship. I want story, Dad delivered. Roy was working under a set of stairs, crouching down, but his big bald head was back and sort of swinging side to side. Me and Tim Curtis were behind him, both holding hammers. Claw hammers, I said. What? Claw hammers. Mindy patted my knee with her fist, and Dad nodded. Yup, they were claws. And I thought, I could sink this into the back of his head. The best part is, when Dad talked to his buddy Tim afterwards, Tim's eyes went wide. I was thinking the same thing. Then, instead of shivering scared under the weight of their brush with premeditated murder, Dad and Tim talked about next steps. How they'd dispose of the body. How they'd flee the country. How the rest of their lives would become one long, wild adventure of dodging cops, wielding hammers, and wooing women with their stories. But what do you expect? Teach a kid to hammer, he's gonna dream of hammer murder now and then. Dad's story stirred us into some limping talk. The story motor knocked, coughed, and sputtered. At least something was happening. But I remembered when story begot story without needing me to jam my lance hands into the boil of story and midwife that shit. I remembered the old days. I sat there listening, lancing, lamenting, and knowing. It's hearing trouble, it's comfort, and it's something else, something worse. It's time, it's age. The clock is slow but stops for nobody. Not even my people. Supper ended. Dessert began. Time for Grammy's strawberry rhubarb pie. This was a needed bomb. I cradled my bowl of pie and ice cream as close to my face as a feed bag, and for a moment, my misery vanished. I ate, blinked slowly, and joined the others in yums and well-dones for Grammy. After pie, I feared the return of silence, so I turned to Grandpa and said, Dad told me you broke into a house when you were a kid and found some old letters? Grandpa said, yes. For a second, I thought that's all I was going to get. I cursed myself for asking a yes or no question. But then he lifted one hand and started pinching his pointer finger and thumb together like he was a crab looking for something to kill. I read the gesture immediately. This man needs a pencil. I had 4 in my pocket at the time. Yes, risking my testicles. A person falls down sometimes, and if they've got 4 pencils in their pocket, they can shish kebab their balls. But I always risk my balls in this way, because you never know when you're going to be around paper and need the salvation of drawing. If I don't have pencils, that's a risk to my soul's balls. I unsheathed a pencil and Grandpa took it. Good boy. Then he started looking around again. I knew what this meant, too. Paper need. Everyone started looking around. I beat them all by grabbing Grandpa's dirty paper plate, flipping it over and slapping it down. Draw on this. My sexist mother shook her head. Only a man would do that. My sexist grandmother and wife agreed. Grandpa started drawing. He drew Hogback Mountain, which is a chain of high hills that rises like a scar across the forehead of Montville. Grandpa drew a road cutting over the back of Hogback, then a square next to the road. A house. He pointed at the square with the pencil, making a little gray dot in the dead center. The Chamberlains. Then he said, they're all buried up there. He started drawing a patch of little squares beside the house. This was the Chamberlain family cemetery. I looked at those little squares. Grandpa pointed at them with the pencil, and as he gave each a little, he named the dead: Bobby, Ruth, Rebecca, Tom, June, Alistair, Calvin, Seth. Wow, I said like I was supposed to, and I meant it. Grandpa's memory comes and goes, but it's perfect for the dead. They're up there still, he said. As far as I know. This, as you can imagine, gave me a chill. And if it didn't, it gives me one now. Where else would they be? And what happened to them? Raptured by some small-time country god or swallowed up by a demon passing through? Who knows? I asked Grandpa and he shrugged. People die. Which reminds me of something one of his friends said long ago. There are people dying now who never died before. The Chamberlain house was empty, abandoned, when Grandpa and his pal broke in. Abandoned really is the word, because everything was still there. Furniture, coats, paintings on the wall, shoes, a roll-top desk. Grandpa got into that desk and found letters. If you're guessing these were war letters, you're right. If you're guessing World War I, II, or Nam, you're wrong. It was the Aroostook War, 1838 to 1839. Grandpa said, Maine's the only state to declare war on another country. That country was Canada. I guess there were some border beefs. The Maine militia stirred itself up and marched to the tippy-top of Maine to stare at staring Canadian soldiers across the St. John River. That's what happened. No fighting. A lot of hard looking. And while this was happening, a soldier, a Chamberlain, wrote letters home. If we'd kept those letters, Grandpa said, all the history museums would be after me. Imagining history museum agents hunting Grandpa filled me with wonder and pride. Pride I piled on top of the pride I felt over Maine beating Texas in the saber-rattling Olympics. Mom must have seen that me and Grandpa were onto something wonderful because she guided the rest of the family into the living room. Grandpa and I stayed at the table. I said, Gramp, when you were a kid. I didn't have to yell now because Grandpa and I were leaning close over the plate map. You used to ride your bike all over Montville visiting people, right? That's right, Grandpa said. Then, because the plate was full of hogback, dead Chamberlains, and historical wonders, Grandpa's pencil hand started sniffing around for more paper. I jumped up and was soon joined by Mom. We searched everywhere and found none. Then Mom went to Grandpa's big desk, an oaken monstrosity exactly like the one you're picturing, and she attacked the large desk calendar there, flipping back and ripping off March. He doesn't need this. There was something eerie about it. He doesn't need March. He'll never see March again. Not that one anyway. None of us will. And it's possible he won't see the next one either. Grandpa was born in 1937. I folded March down to size, then slapped it in front of Grandpa, and he got busy drawing a map of his childhood. Liberty Road, Lisa Lane, Mud Pond, and Kingdom Bog. The Atkinson Farm. The Bartlett House. The old Choate Place. Some of the houses and barns are still there. Most have gone to pieces. That house burned. That one too. Some of the old names are still there. Not many. He hung himself. Next winter, so did she. From the same beam. Grandpa drew the long hill where he and friends went sliding in the winter. Took you a half hour to walk back up to the top. The secret sacred fishing hole. Fish as long as your leg. The cellar holes of homes that were either pulled screaming into the sky or swallowed screaming into the earth. The house of the wicked old man. A drunk who beat his wife and produced a son, Hiram, who was just as bad. Grandpa drew the school, an actual one-room schoolhouse. He drew the tree Hiram crashed into with his truck one night. Grandpa and a buddy saw fire down at the bottom of a field. They went, and there was Hiram in his truck with a busily bleeding head, his truck against a tree and burning a little. They helped Hiram out of the truck, put him in Grandpa's father's truck, and drove him to Doc Collins. Grandpa told Doc, "He's drunk." Doc smiled and said, "This'll sober him up," and slapped a rag of something on the wound. Iodine, whiskey, cauterizing fire? These were the very old days. Another square on the map was the home of the oldest man I ever saw, 100 years old and more. Grandpa's father drove out to talk to the old man and took Grandpa along. He was a boy at the time. The old man sat outside his house in a cane-backed kitchen chair, holding a horn up to his ear so people could shout conversation into it. A horn that was 100% probably a pilgrim's cornucopia. It worked too. "I'm buying some for the family." The old man had a beard down to the ground. This was around 1943, so Grandpa was listening to and looking at an old man who'd been a boy in the 1840s, which means that guy's old people stretched their chilly childhood toes into the 1700s. The back of March filled up with other squares, other names. Dead, dead, and more dead. Grandpa turned every inch of the old mountain town into a graveyard, which includes his parents' graves. And his Grandpa and Grammy have their plots picked out. This is where Grandpa won an ice cream eating contest when he was 10, froze the lining of his stomach, and almost died, where Grandpa pushed a derelict Ford Model T down a hill with friends, destroying it, where Grandpa met the man who lived in a shack without a stove. He didn't need a stove. He had a 700-pound pig who slept under his bed and heated the place, where Grandpa quit school, where Grandpa met Grammy, where Grandpa will go when he dies. When the visit ended, I hugged Grammy, said, "I love you," and thanked her again for the pie. I hugged Grandpa and said, "I love you." Grandpa said, "Don't lie to me," which is his "I love you" too. Then I climbed into the car and we headed home, down out of Montville, 80 miles back to Mom and Dad's house in Windham, a town first settled in 1737, back in the days of the Beardman's people. Heat lightning lit the sky as we drove. Fireflies glowed in the ditches and fields, and so forth. The woods crowding the road looked old, like they'd been there from the beginning, but I knew better. There were towns beneath the trees' feet, towns down deep. We drove from Montville to Palermo, from Hibbert's Gore to Somerville, from Windsor to Chelsea to Gardiner. On and on, past late evening woods, ponds, bogs, and fields, past towns full of squares, little squares, and names of their own. Out there in the dark, there were histories just as old as you could want, as funny and sad and scary and awful as you could stand. So many families, so much time. The longer we drove, the bigger it all seemed. The graveyard, but with pie in my belly and stories in my head, with fireflies and lightning out walking. I could hope this graveyard was the living kind, where the stones have room for more than the usual. Plenty of room, as long as the people don't get too quiet or too comfortable. Someone, shout them awake, as long as they keep sitting down together, leaning close over maps, talking, telling, filling up the stones with story after story after story, the stones going from here to far away, going from gray to blue, to light blue, to the color of the sky.